If you think that in actual fact in many terrorism cases the intelligence services are suspects, I'm not saying that all terrorism is fomented by the intelligence services, but a very large proportion of it is, and that's historically documented. Look up Gladio if you don't believe me. Now, do you want the people who are the terrorists to be able to look at your emails and look at? Imagine what the power that gives the new Stasi if they can look at the emails of all politicians, for example, the politicians that might call them to account. They could tap them on the shoulder and say, "Do you want people to find out about your extramarital affair?" That's what we're dealing with here.
Driving home with BCFM 93.2, the station you can count on.
And now on to the suspicious death of Michael Hastings. And I'm going to hear from him now. He's a US investigative journalist, won several awards, and he got the Afghanistan boss, the general in charge of the US troops in Afghanistan, sacked, Martin. I mean, by an article that he wrote, really, which was showing that McChrystal was being very disrespectful to Obama. Obama then sacked him. Yeah. Anyway, Michael Hastings died in a rather nasty, fiery car crash in Los Angeles back in June. So I thought I'd trawl the internet a little bit and find out who he was. So let's have a listen to him now, talking a bit earlier this year. And he's talking about how the press corps actually, rather than working for the public, tends to work for the Pentagon.
It's got a good amount of publicity, building momentum, but not too many people outside of the Salon Glenn Greenwald or others have sort of really picked out on this line. We have the Pentagon spokesperson, which General McChrystal was, at the time of the invasion of Iraq, telling me we totally co-opted the media on that one. Some of us didn't think it was a good idea. And then he went through a list of all these journalists who he felt were co-opted. These are big-time, well-paid, well-represented, they have tons of audience, and he was telling me that they co-opted the media. And when the Pentagon spokesperson saying that, and we saw the former White House spokesperson Scott McClellan say that, and a lot of other journalists are saying, a lot of other journalists sort of outside that mainstream element are saying that, I think one has to really look at what we've been doing the past 10 years. I think the invasion of Iraq is the great journalistic sort of scandal of our lifetimes. Hopefully it will be of our lifetimes. I don't think the country could take much more than that. And the question is, have we learned from that? And sadly, I don't know if we have.
An honest account. You didn't try to protect McChrystal or the aides that surrounded him, and then you got really crazy backlash.
I was shocked that I was shocked that President Obama fired him. I think that was very significant. I did not realize how bad the relationship between the president and the Pentagon had been. And I think what that meant was this was President Obama reasserting his control over the Pentagon. So yeah, I was shocked on that front. I was also surprised by the media's response. And it was a portion of the media, the Pentagon media, the national security media. And at first I was sort of confused about it, and I was like, well, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They don't really mean what they're saying about the story. But then as months and months went on, I'd get along fine with different government officials for the most part, but there was still this really intense, hatred among a few of my colleagues. And I think, and the sort of insight I had, or what I kind of realized, was that the Pentagon press corps is just that. They're the press corps for the Pentagon. And I know that sounds overstated.
Well, they serve the Pentagon, and they're scared to hurt the feelings, I guess you could say, or step on the toes of the Pentagon.
Right. Look, there was a Pentagon spokesperson, a guy by the name of Jeff Morrell. And now you knew Jeff Morrell was telling the truth because he'd start to sweat, because he'd be lying all the other time. And I listened to a radio show, and it's like Jeff Morrell and reporter from X mainstream publication, and I'm not going to mention, and they sound the same, and they're complimenting each other and saying what great jobs they're both doing. And look, like, if that's what you want to do, I'm all for it. I understand there's a lot of different pressures.
But does that keep the war going? Does that keep the public completely in the dark about what's going on in the war?
The president was coming into, trying to take over the Pentagon, didn't realize how much resistance he would face. And I think when the brass saw weakness, they took advantage of it. They took advantage of it in a major way. And 9 months later, after that meeting, when General Petraeus and General McChrystal wanted more troops, how did they get it? They went to the media. They leaked to the media. They said to the media, if we don't get these troops, we're going to resign. That's very significant because it boxes the president in and says, okay, you want to take us on, you're going to have to suffer the political consequences for it. One of the sort of scary realizations I had while reporting this book, and it came to me at the end, was that I asked myself the question, even if President Obama wanted to start these wars, give me the benefit of the doubt, could he stop it? Could he have done it? Is it even possible for the president to get a handle on this massive military bureaucracy. 54% of our federal tax dollars go to the Pentagon. There's more employees in the Pentagon than there are in the states of Vermont, Wyoming, and probably even Rhode Island. There's 3.2 million employees in the Pentagon. It's such a huge, it's almost the 51st state. It's such a huge challenge for any president, especially a young president, especially a president with no military experience. And what really came to mind was John F. Kennedy had a similar experience with the Bay of Pigs, where the generals in the CIA took advantage of him, they pulled him into something he didn't want to do, and afterwards he said those SOBs just sat there nodding with all the fruit salad on their chest, giving me bad advice, saying it would work. And Kennedy learned the hard lesson, and Kennedy was a war hero too, so he had more advantage of it, more sort of understanding of it. And I think it was a lesson that President Obama has learned.
So that was the very fast-talking, highly intelligent, award-winning investigative journalist Michael Hastings. Martin, the questions about the crash are largely to do with a friend of his who he called into the night before the crash, and that was on Tuesday the 18th of June this year, and he said that he thought his car, his Mercedes, was being tampered with, and he asked to borrow her Volvo. She actually was having trouble with her car too, so she didn't, and then when he drove off from there, that was when the car took off at 70 miles an hour. One of the most suspicious things about it is one of the police cameras shows that whilst he was flying past a police car about 70 miles an hour in Los Angeles, he had his foot hard down on the brake.
Yes, and then he died in the car crash. But the suspicion is, even in mainstream circles in America, its suspicion is that he has been murdered by the Pentagon. That's got to be the police. If you were a police officer investigating it, that's what you've got to presume is going on. And we were talking earlier: is it okay for the Pentagon to listen to everybody's phone calls? Well, if they're going around murdering people, the answer is no. And can I just mention that Seymour Hersh, he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. Everything he says, all journalists in America know exactly who he is and how reliable he is. He says the story about the assassination of bin Laden in Pakistan is a pack of lies. Now, do people want to hear the truth, that the government is lying to them about all of this, or do they want to stick their finger in their ears and go la 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 and wait for World War III? I think not.
Well, let's hear a little bit more now from Michael Hastings.
An information operations cell, which is a cell that by definition is trained to conduct psychological operations and military deception, was asked by Lieutenant General Caldwell and his staff to use their skills on visiting U.S. senators and other VIPs. Now, the cell, this I.O. cell, was led by a gentleman named Lieutenant Colonel Michael Holmes. Lieutenant Colonel Holmes raised objections to being asked to do this. He said, hey, I'm an I.O. cell. Information operations is only supposed to be used for foreign audiences. It's a really bad idea to be using my team, because we specialize in psychological operations and whatnot, to be doing this. But the pressure kept on mounting on him to focus all his efforts not on the Afghans but on Americans visiting. Finally, he received a written order to this effect. Focus all your efforts on essentially manipulating visiting senators. He then took that order and went to a lawyer, a JAG lawyer. The lawyer said, yes, this is not right. This is illegal. Another lawyer confirmed that opinion, and then Caldwell's people refined the order to say, oh, well, you're only looking at public records, but then they launched a retaliatory investigation into the whistleblower, Colonel Michael Holmes. And after he tried to get his complaints redressed and said, hey, I was attacked because I'm a whistleblower, I was investigated because I'm a whistleblower, that also had no impact, and so eventually he decided to go public with his story.
Michael Hastings there, who died early this year. Martin, what he's talking about there is actually using the national security agents basically against your political opponents, isn't he?
Well, it's not using it. If the politicians are blackmailed by the security chiefs, you then wonder whether you've got a democracy at all. Think Russia. Think the FSB. Is Russia a democracy? Is the US a democracy? Is Britain a democracy if the security services have all the power?
Former counterterrorism official Richard Clark spoke in an interview to the Huffington Post saying, look, he said, it is possible for intelligence agencies to seize control of a car remotely. That's what he claims, and to do what they want to it. And he went on to say, my rule has always been you don't knock down a conspiracy theory until you can prove it wrong.
Obama has enshrined the two most radical principles of the Bush doctrine. The first is, he got rid of torture and sort of got rid of extraordinary rendition, but enshrines targeted assassination. At the same time, he doesn't apologize for, he won't apologize for the scandal in Benghazi. He won't apologize for the IRS is a few bad apples. And he says, no, the AP and spying on journalists is okay. So he enshrines killing people and spying on journalists as the two major tenets of his national security state. I think this is outrageous.
The Obama administration has clearly declared war on the press. It's declared war on investigative journalists, our sources. I think the only recourse to this kind of behavior by the government is to say back to the government, we declare war on you, and from this point forward, we should no longer, as a media as a whole, cooperate in any manner with the government in terms of when we're doing national security stories. We should withdraw all our cooperation, and we should publish everything we know, because it's a free press, and it's not a free except for when the government tells me to do it press. We've been way too easy going with these guys. We've let them get away with this for years. We've let them tell us what to print, what not to print, and I say be done with it, and everybody should just get together and fire back, because no one else is going to defend the press.
That was the voice of Michael Hastings, investigative journalist in the United States, working for Rolling Stone magazine and others, BuzzFeed as well, who died earlier this year in suspicious circumstances in Mercedes in Los Angeles. Martin, he said that he was looking into something very hot and he was going to have to go under the radar, possibly. His wife has said that was Brennan, the new CIA director, Brennan, starting to use the Central Intelligence apparatus against political opponent, the military, US military's political opponents domestically, and that's why he's there. Really, I think at least possibly that's one of the reasons he's there, saying that the press needs to declare war back, because actually what's happened is the national security agencies have declared war on the public through the press and particularly investigative journalists.
Well, again, people can just do a search and look up COINTELPRO, counterintelligence propaganda, run by the FBI in the 1980s. It's all on the record. Basically, the intelligence services in this country as well. I mean, we've found that the police have been cooperating with the blacklisting of trade unionists. The activists have always known that the security services are basically corrupt, and they have been for a long time. And when journalists speak out like Michael Hastings, our suspicion is that this chap was murdered. Now, if you think it's okay for the intelligence services to listen to everybody's phone calls when they're going around murdering journalists, then I have a totalitarian state to sell you.
Finally, Michael's book is The Operators, the wild and terrifying inside story of America's war in Afghanistan. That's Michael Hastings, the most impact-laden story of the year, says Vanity Fair, and that is available at the moment in paperback for something like £5-6 if you want to have a read of Michael's final book.
Drive Time on BCFM 93.2.